So let's move into who was running the presidency for the last 4 years. A lot of people say it was Obama's third term. There's rumors of, and these are friends of mine that are moderate Democrats say they thought it was Elizabeth Warren running it. They thought it was Bernie Sanders running it. But I think the general consensus, I think if you asked, the majority of the population, they think it was Obama's third term.
It was for sure Obama's third term. I don't think that's even a question. I don't think anyone, it definitely was. And that's why you saw Obama fighting for his dear life. Why was he fighting so hard in the fall? Because he was fighting for his fourth term. He was fighting for his own legacy. The relationship between Obama and Biden is most reminiscent of that between LBJ and JFK. JFK had little respect for Lyndon B. Johnson, but he picked him anyway because he wanted to win the South. He wanted to win Texas. But he had very little respect for LBJ's intellect. JFK was surrounded by his Harvard brain trust, and he had immense disdain for LBJ's Texas Hill Country vibe. And that was the same attitude that Obama had towards Biden. Obama thought that Biden would eventually fuck everything up. And that's eventually actually what happened. So, but also he didn't have much faith in Kamala Harris. Before she ascended to the top role, he was vetting people like Mark Kelly and Andy Bashir. Most party chieftains didn't have Kamala Harris as their number one choice. But in the party of DEI, you can't skip a black woman. The optics would have been terrible.
So who is running it? Who are the names?
Steve Ricchetti, his senior advisor, Anita Dunn, Mike Donnellan, Ron Klain, Jeb Zients, Bob Bauer, his personal lawyer, who's actually his personal lawyer, who actually leased a book basically grifting off his relationship with the Bidens. I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying all of this. Please give me credit but these are the people who ran our country for the last 4 years.
So let's go through each name for all of the audience. Not everybody is as tuned in with who's who in the political world.
As a general overview, these are the people who made a living off of their connection with Biden. It's like they were leeching off the Biden name for decades, and all of them realized that they would never work for another president, so they had to ride the gravy train all the way through.
First name you mentioned,
Steve Ricchetti, the same guy who put his own kid at the Treasury.
Who is he? What's his position?
His most senior White House senior advisor. Like, all of them are White House counselor or White House senior advisor, and they are the gatekeepers of the president.
Who's the next name?
Mike Donnellan, the same guy who's feeding, I'm just going to say it like it is, feeding Biden fake numbers, telling him that he would win, he would beat Trump. Seriously, are you kidding me? And the truth of the matter is, by the time Biden was going to drop out, he was on track to lose the Electoral College by 400 votes. Trump was on track to get 400 Electoral College votes. Not a typo. I'm not misspeaking. 400 electoral votes by the time he dropped out. And Mike Donnellan, his pollster, whom he, they go back decades. By the way, the major qualification for all of these folks is that they know Biden really well. These aren't like PhDs or like rocket scientists or anything like that. It's just because of loyalty. And they stayed with him for a number of years. So Mike Donnellan, Nancy Pelosi actually called him out. And she said, show me the numbers, Mike. Like, show me where you're getting these numbers that show that Biden can still beat Trump. And Donnellan wasn't able to deliver. No such numbers exist.
Who's the next name?
Who did I say? Anita Dunn. I actually have a soft spot for Anita Dunn. Because she got iced out of the Biden circle in July, August of this past year, because she dared to say, maybe it's a good idea for the president to shy away from his convicted felon of a son, because the optics aren't great.
Why do you have a soft spot for somebody who's running the country in the shadows to the ground?
Because she dared to speak up. She's the only one who did.
Did we cover all the names?
Did we? Jill Biden?
Joe Biden.
She was like president. She was president. I was with Joe and Jill the night of the debate. I was at their VIP debate watch party. I slept all the way to Atlanta, Georgia for that, to show my support. Oh my gosh, Sean, you wouldn't believe it. So that night I have the pictures too. I was with Joe, and so Jill takes Joe by the hand. The names are so similar, I'm sorry. Jill takes Joe by the hand on stage, and she's like, Joe, you knew all the facts. You answered all the questions. And you know that hand gesture that she does. And I'm thinking, you're treating him like a first grader. You know, like just because he, you know, like you shouldn't applaud him for doing the basics. And you could just tell that she was fighting for dear life to hold on to the vestige of power. And just a few days later, she was on the cover of Vogue. So the whole thing was a Jill Biden show. She was not as authentic as Joe, I want to say. I think as Joe got older, maybe you think I'm naive in saying this, but I'm not even sure if he remembers all of the corruption that he engaged in.
It doesn't surprise me.
Like, I don't think he had a full understanding what was going on.
I don't think anybody would argue that.
Okay.
And so when we say, was this Obama's third term, how was he connected with these people?
Suzanne.
Oh, Shadow Malley Dillon is an Obama vet. She became the deputy White House chief of staff, and she ended up running Kamala Harris's campaign because she gave Kamala an ultimatum saying, the buck doesn't stop with me, I'm out of here. Because Kamala Harris has a history of putting her family in charge. People like Maya Harris, Mina Harris, and Tony West, the chief legal officer of Uber. Because Kamala Harris has a history of putting her family in charge. People like Maya Harris, Mina Harris, and Tony West, the chief legal officer of Uber. When you put your family in charge, things, unless you're like Bobby Kennedy, like the original Kennedys, probably doesn't end well. And her 2019 campaign was a disaster. She was polling at 1%. She was a sitting U.S. senator. She didn't even make it to Iowa. That's how bad it was. And so Jenna O'Malley Dillon was an Obama loyalist. Her primary loyalty was to Obama, and she gave Kamala Harris that ultimatum. And then you had people like David Plouffe. So they helicoptered in Obama's people. They were running Kamala Harris's 2024 campaign like Obama's 2008 campaign. But the world has shifted since then.
Mm-hmm. And so would all these people congregate together and come up with the plan? I mean, the border, the Afghanistan withdrawal, the DEI, the LGBTQ.
Well, you gotta keep in mind that a lot of these people hated each other. So when Harris ascended to the top, she pushed Donnellan out. Okay, and Anita Dunn was never known to be, I'm trying to be euphemistic, it was never known to be a fan of Kamala Harris's. The Biden White House and the Harris office are two very distinct entities. They hated each other. The staffers were constantly at war. And so these are two very distinct entities.
Mm-hmm.
And their interests often collided. So things were rocky.
So where did the agenda come from then? Did it come from Obama through these people?
I think that's true. Also, it came from unelected, inexperienced, the 20, 30-year-olds that I was referencing earlier. People that none of us ever elected, people whose names you would never recognize, imposing their own vision of America onto everyone else. There was a huge LGBTQI, I'm losing track of the letters, LGBTQIA plus contingency in the White House who sought to impose their own vision of wokeness onto the rest of us. And so you had the pride flags on the storied pillars of the White House.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And man, This is crazy.
Like, pride became their religion, you know? There's nothing wrong. I mean,
What about all the executive orders? Who is writing those up?
his senior advisors.
So they would just, all these different people, they weren't congregating with each other. There was no like collective agenda.
There was this one time
they were all out for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. There was this one time he signed an executive order, and someone in the crowd was asking him about it the next day, and he would have no idea what they were talking about.
Order.
The border was an unforgivable mistake. Unforgivable.
Was it intentional?
Absolutely, I think it was intentional. Absolutely, because we have members of Congress in the Democratic Party who love migrants, who think that we should offer asylum to basically anyone who asks for it. These people, and I don't know why it's so controversial for people to acknowledge that yes, Democrats want these people to be potentially new voters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a logical conclusion. Why is that controversial to say?
Is there a...
Like, they would never admit that. But, I mean, like, the DNC itself would never admit that, but there are a lot of, like, members of Congress who openly are vouching for that. So.
Was that the agenda? I mean, was that the talk behind the scenes? We got to get these people in to turn into voters?
No, because the people at the DNC, at least the top donors, they're kind of like limousine liberals. It's a different vibe. It's different from the activist level.
Okay.
There are different gradations. Like, the people that I'm sorry if this sounds like elitist or anything, but like when at donor events, they're like venture capitalists, they're Silicon Valley,
Mm-hmm.
they're investment bankers. They're not thinking that way. But the activists, for sure, they want to open the borders. They don't want national borders. They don't give a damn about national sovereignty. They care more about like people in Mexico than they do about American children. And why is it so controversial to want America first? Why is it bad to say that? I don't understand. I love this country so much. I'm so grateful to be here. In China, I would have been arrested already. So why is it so bad to want to put my country first? Yeah. Chris Coons is an interesting fellow.
So very influential to Biden.
Very, very influential. I think he was the single most influential senator during the Biden years. Who else? Chris Coons, it's the Delaware thing. And Ted Kaufman, who became senator when Biden became vice president, was also very close to Biden. He was also close to the author, John Meacham. John Meacham obviously was aware of Biden's cognitive decline, yet he still went on cable TV espousing the opposite. You had these people who supposedly, I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying this, but Sean, it's the truth. These people who supposedly, they embody the greatest pinnacle of American media and American journalism, all of them, almost without an exception, lied to the American people. Kamala Harris lied to the American people when she vouched for Biden's cognitive fitness, when all of them knew that he wasn't fit.
Let's go back to, I'm trying to figure out how Obama was running the show, because you pretty much said, yes, it was Obama's third term.
And he's the one who pushed Biden out, too.
But we're also saying that all of the people that you just mentioned were not on the same page. It was very argumentative. They didn't like each other. And so if he was influencing all of them, it seems like they would have been on the same page.
I should also mention that these people are Obama people, too.
Mm-hmm.
They worked for him. Like, Anita Dunn was originally an Obama person. Jen O'Malley Dillon was an Obama person. So there's tremendous overlap, too. But Obama was definitely, he continued to pull the strings up until the very end. He was the one who orchestrated the Clooney letter. Now, George Clooney is angry at Obama for getting him involved in politics because Clooney is getting a lot of pushback for everything.
Poor Clooney.
And so Obama is the reason why donors even gave. Like, let's be honest, Biden is no draw. I hosted Biden myself on May 1st. at the Mayflower in DC, I had to beg people. Sean, it got to the point where I was sending texts in like capital letters saying, please give emoji face. Like, please. Because my name was on the flyer. Like, I had to deliver, you know? It was hard, it was so hard to make this out because people, you can't lie to the American people. You know, on the whole, the wisdom of the crowds. The American people knew, you could see it, that this guy wasn't fit. It was like pulling teeth to get people to give. So finally, I was able to raise just $1 million, which is far lower than I usually do. But it's just.
So were these his agendas? Were these Obama's agendas that we saw roll out over the past 4 years? That's what I'm asking, because, you know, I am a realist and I just want to know the truth. And so, you know, like I had mentioned, like a lot of people think that it was Obama's third term, but then we have you saying that these people weren't getting along.
But that's
so
not mutually exclusive.
If it was orchestrated, then from him, then it seems like these people will be getting along. And do you see what I'm saying?
It's not mutually exclusive because they didn't get along because they were all vying for the most power, like amongst themselves. They were vying for ascendancy amongst themselves, but they were still executing his agenda. Like Obama is what continues to be a more forceful figure than Biden is. And he was the draw at fundraising events. He was the reason why people were showing up. Biden is no draw. Okay? So I was a co-host for an event that George Clooney and Julia Roberts hosted in Hollywood in June. People came for Obama. And I don't know if the press ever mentioned this, but that night, Obama himself was shocked to see Biden's decline. You could tell. And he was like holding Biden by the hand and shepherding him off the stage because Biden didn't know to leave the stage after the event was over. And you could just tell people in the crowd, like, looking at each other saying, like, what's going on? But everyone was playing their part in an emperor has no clothes situation because in their mind, the alternative was so dire, and that is Trump. And have you seen The Wire? You know that phrase, you come at the king, you better not miss. If you can't push Biden aside and you fail that attempt, the only person who benefits is Trump. So that was their logic.
So were they, why are they so fearful of Trump? Are they worried that, we saw these executive orders come out. Does it have to do with protecting themselves? You know, we have the Epstein stuff that's hopefully going to come out if Kash Patel gets in. We have the Diddy stuff going on.
Trump is on that list.
They think that Trump was on that list.
They pretend to hate Trump, but it's just a gag. It's just a show. It's a charade. You saw Obama yucking it up with him at someone's funeral, at Jimmy Carter's funeral. Democrats pretend to hate Trump, but at the end of the day, they crave him. They're obsessed with him. They need him for their fundraising machine. They need him for their raison d'etre. Without Trump, they would have no rudder. They would be even worse off than they are. Trump is their lodestar. It's their reason for existence. They're obsessed with the man.
So they're not trying to protect themselves.
They have no other reason to exist at this point because their party is just this. It's just their party basically. It's in shambles.